When I was a kid, I used to watch shonen anime on Jetix. It was Cartoon Network sort of vibe, but it served kind of edgy cartoons and anime to its viewers. And like those shows, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, Yu-Gi-Oh, they all have cool moments, make you feel hype and in the zone in terms of watching the show. You're invested. These are because of the cool moments that you can identify with because you've just been watching this character go through their journey, and although they might not change too much, you still grow accustomed to their charm, whether that just be because they're a cool guy with a sword or someone who just sees the best in everyone. Episode 18 of Jujutsu Kaisen didn't do this. This episode starts with Hidodori walking on autopilot, in shock of what he or his body has just done. Thousands dead, a city in ruin. The guilt and pain play over and over in his head, using the voices of his colleagues and loved ones, dragging him into despair. This scene's dark themes are contrasted by a bright white title card. And visually, we switch back to the fantasy. He needs to save the people around him. He needs to find them and help them. But where are they? He is tired. He has done enough. Following this scene, we see what only can be described as a dance of death. Grant us some level of reprieve. Speaking clearly, in my own opinion, this was the best episode this show has to date. When following this story, I was really impressed with the world building and pacing that it was able to deliver this story in. But Itadori didn't feel like a main character, he felt like a plot device. I was always mesmerized by the relationship between Gojo and Geto. There was always so much mystery behind them. Who are they? What can they do? What's their past? Were they friends? And if so, what happened between them? What caused this divide between these two characters that, even though they're side characters, seem to have more agency in the story than Itadori himself? And how was the narrative going to go in Itadori's direction? Because he is the main character after all, it's his story. The show has done really well so far as to not fall for the classic shonen tropes. Things like gaining a power boost out of nowhere because your friends are in danger, time skips and training montages. That was until a certain point. Let me describe a character to you. A powerful, disinterested character who is tasked with taking on a student. The character has an otherworldly or demonic presence that at times he can't control and puts those around him in danger. They teach the student many lessons, along with one in particular, a technique, a powerful technique that the character carries with them throughout the story and almost becomes a staple of itself. This makes the student not only more powerful, but begins the agency that they so very desperately needed in their own stories. If this sounds familiar to you, you probably know of Jiraiya the Galad. As two individuals go, Nanami and Jiraiya have very little in common. One is a legendary war hero who has some questionable hobbies. The other is a retired fighter or warrior who's just trying to live in mediocrity, living his life in his office. But in relation to our protagonist and his story, they are nearly identical. And this is a classic shonen trope. It's seen in a crazy amount of stories, especially ones that relate heavily to Jujutsu Kaisen in their themes. And there's another trope that these types of characters in these types of stories follow. Both Jiraiya and Nanami fall. They both die to an incredibly overwhelming enemy and then pass the burden down to their student. In Jiraiya's case, it's far more indirect. He was on a secret mission. He wasn't even sure if Naruto would find out. But in the case of Nanami, it couldn't be more direct. Earlier I said that this story was good because it wasn't predictable. It wasn't a classic shonen. I still really do think that's true, excluding this character of Kento Nanami. Thank you for watching. This scene really hit me harder than any other scene in this show. From the moment we saw Nanami at the start of this episode, it wouldn't take a genius to understand what was going to happen. But instead of doing a predictable, boring send-off where he fights till his last, he's just in a bitter, desperate struggle, floating between life and death. I think it was genuinely just beautiful.